The wind came first, whistling low through the bone-dry grass like a voice warning no one in particular. Evening spilled across the sky in bruised violets and gold, and the world felt paused between heat and shadow. The town of Ash Hollow sat quiet, curled against the hills like something holding its breath. Even the crows were silent. Only the dust stirred. They walked in from the south road, two figures cut from another time, though the world hadn't ever really belonged to them to begin with. Tashina walked ahead, her moccasins silent in the dirt, shoulders straight beneath a worn wool shawl. She was 25, her eyes dark as tree knots, lips tight, bearing a kind of stillness that had nothing to do with fear. Her younger sister, Enola, trailed just behind, 23, lean and quick-footed, her expression flickering between wariness and wonder. They had walked too far, through too much, and yet neither of them turned back to see where they'd come from. They were looking forward to the edge of the town, to a place that might offer shelter, even if only for a night. The ranch at the far end of Ash Hollow wasn't much to look at. Aged fence lines, a barn slouched slightly to one side, a house built in weathered pine. But to them it was a monument of hope. A place still standing. They reached the steps just as the last of the daylight kissed the horizon. The door opened before they could knock. Wyatt Maddox stood there, 30 years of grit and quiet resentment carved into his face. He was a broad-shouldered man, heavy in frame, with eyes that held years of loss like sediment at the bottom of a dry well. His hat was pulled low, his coat still dusted with trail. He said nothing at first, just studied the two women like one might study a mirage, unsure if it would vanish if looked at too long. "Please," Enola said. Her voice was small but not fragile. "Let us stay." Tashina said nothing, but her eyes met Wyatt's, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them. Something old and aching. He looked past them to the horizon. The wind had dropped. He could hear his own breath. Then he stepped back. "Barn's clean," he said. "It'll do for the night." They slept on hay wrapped in borrowed blankets, and it should have felt like failure. But to Enola it felt like breathing again. And to Tashina it felt like a reprieve, however brief. In the days that followed, they did not ask for more, but they gave it. Enola sang to the goats while she worked, a lullaby their mother once sang at the river's edge. Tashina mended the saddle harnesses without being asked. She moved like someone used to being invisible, and yet, Wyatt saw her. He didn't speak much. He never did. But he watched, when Tashina walked past the corral at dawn, when she gathered kindling at dusk. He noticed how Enola smiled like the world hadn't crushed her yet. He noticed the silence that always followed the sisters, as if they carried their own stillness from somewhere far away. Word got around town. Sheriff Boone Ledger, a man whose face always seemed pinched by suspicion, stopped by Wyatt's porch 2 days later, his boots heavy on the steps. "You keepin' company now?" the sheriff asked, eyeing the sisters in the distance, working by the barn. "I'm feedin' mouths that need feedin'," Wyatt replied, his tone flat. Boone narrowed his eyes. "You start lettin' folks like that stay, soon enough you'll find yourself without a town to belong to." Wyatt didn't respond. He let the silence say what he couldn't. That evening, after the sun dropped low and painted the fields in dying gold, Tashina found a young mare limping near the creek. Her leg was cut, shallow but dirty. She guided it back slowly, whispering in a tongue older than the fences around them. By the time Wyatt found her, she had the horse tied and was cleaning the wound with water from her own canteen. "You didn't have to," he said, not unkindly. She didn't look up. "It hurt." He watched her for a while longer, then left. When she returned to the barn, a blanket she hadn't brought was folded neatly by her place. Still, the town did not forget. At the general store, Etta Ray, 60, sharp-eyed and silver-haired, was the only one who spoke to the sisters kindly. The others muttered or turned away. One man spat near Enola's feet as she passed. They carried their shame like stones, silently. And that night, as the sky darkened with coming rain, Wyatt left a sack of red apples beside the barn door. No word. just grace, quiet and undeserved. The storm came in hard and sudden. Thunder rolled over the hills like cannon fire. The barn roof began to leak, and Wyatt rose from his bed with a start. He found the sisters outside, shielding goats with a torn tarp, drenched and shivering. Tashina refused to leave the animals until Enola tugged her toward the house. He led them in, wordlessly, and stoked the fire. The house smelled of smoke and pine resin. The silence between them was thick until Tashina spoke, softly, as if unsure the moment could bear it. "Our village burned," she said. "Not from accident. From men." Wyatt didn't ask more. He simply nodded. She sat near the hearth, hands outstretched to the flame. "The river where I learned to fish. The trees I carved my first doll from. All of it gone." Enola fell asleep on the floor beside them, the fire warming her cheeks. Wyatt poured tea and handed a cup to Tashina. "You gonna keep runnin'?" he asked. She stared into the fire. "I don't know how to stop." The tea steamed between them. Sheriff Boone returned 3 days later. This time, he didn't ask. He warned. "You're not married to her. You're not family. You keep 'em, you choose a side." Wyatt felt the words land in his gut like lead. After the sheriff left, he sat on his porch and said nothing for hours. But that night, he didn't ask the sisters to return to the barn. Instead, he built a bed from crates and gave them a room. There were no declarations, no confessions, only a carved wooden charm left by Tashina on his workbench, a tiny horse, carefully shaped and polished. He said nothing, but from that day forward it rode with him everywhere. Days melted into one another. The town grew colder toward Wyatt, but Etta Ray began slipping Tashina bits of cloth and thread. "Make beauty when you can," she said. "Even if no one sees it." Wyatt saw it. He saw the small things, the way Tashina cleaned his tools before he returned from riding, the way she left a folded shirt by the door when she repaired the tear in his coat. He saw the grief in her eyes and the resilience beneath it. One night, without a word, he took her hand. It was a moment, not a promise, but it was real. And then fire came again. No warning, just flame. The barn caught like dry paper, and by the time they smelled smoke, the sky was already bleeding orange. Enola's scream tore the night apart. She was inside, fetching water. Wyatt didn't hesitate. He ran through the fire, arms raised, face blistering from heat. He came out coughing, Enola cradled against his chest, her dress singed but her body safe. Tashina dropped to her knees in the dirt, her hands shaking. She said nothing, but the look she gave Wyatt was not one a heart forgets. The townsfolk gathered in the smoke's aftermath. Sheriff Boone stood with his arms crossed, eyes full of things he would never say. No one confessed. No one needed to. The silence was enough. Etta came forward and helped carry Enola inside. Later, when the fire was out and the stars blinked down like distant watchers, Wyatt asked Tashina, "Do you want to leave?" She looked at him, then at Enola sleeping nearby. "No," she said. "Not anymore." So they stayed. They were married beneath the cottonwood by the creek, just them and Etta and a field of prairie flowers. Tashina wore white trimmed with blue beads from her mother's pouch. Wyatt wore his best shirt, a little too tight from years untouched. He kissed her hand, not her lip, and that was enough. The town didn't cheer. But they didn't burn anything else either. And sometimes that's all hope needs. Years later, when children asked how they came to be here, Tashina would smile and say, "We knocked. And someone opened the door." And Wyatt would add, "It was the first time I heard the wind speak kindly." If you've ever been turned away, remember this. Some hearts don't open fast. Some are swollen with hurt, heavy with silence. But they can still open. So knock. And wait.